The silence feels different when an empath finally stops caring. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's the kind of quiet that makes people who took their kindness for granted suddenly realize something irreversible has changed. You know that friend who always answered at 3 in the morning? The coworker who carried everyone's emotional baggage like it weighed nothing? The partner who loved you through every storm you created? They're still there, but something fundamental has shifted. The light behind their eyes when they looked at you has dimmed. Not with anger, not with resentment, with something far more final: indifference. Most people don't understand what it takes to push an empath to this point. They assume empaths are endlessly forgiving, perpetually available, infinitely resilient. They mistake an empath's patience for weakness, their compassion for naivete, their silence for acceptance. What they fail to grasp is that empaths don't stop caring because they want to. They stop caring because they have to survive. The breaking point doesn't arrive with fanfare. There's no explosive argument, no dramatic exit, no final ultimatum. Instead, it accumulates slowly, like water filling a glass drop by drop, until that last, seemingly insignificant moment when everything overflows. Maybe it's being interrupted for the 100th time while sharing something important. Maybe it's watching someone you helped succeed forget you existed. Maybe it's the casual cruelty of someone who knows your wounds and presses on them anyway because they can.
Empaths absorb everything. They feel your pain as if it's carved into their own chest. They celebrate your victories like personal achievements. They hold space for your worst days and never send you an invoice for their time. But this extraordinary ability to feel deeply becomes their greatest vulnerability when surrounded by people who view emotional generosity as an unlimited resource to exploit.
The transformation begins quietly. The empath who once texted back immediately now takes hours or days to respond. The person who always said yes starts saying no without elaborate explanations. The shoulder that was always available for crying suddenly has boundaries. They stop asking how you're doing because they've learned your answer is always a prelude to another favor. They stop sharing their own struggles because every time they did, the conversation somehow circled back to you. What shocks people most isn't the withdrawal itself, but the completeness of it. Empaths who stop caring don't do so halfway. When they close a door, they don't leave it cracked open for manipulation. They don't respond to guilt trips. They don't engage with love bombing or sudden displays of appreciation that conveniently appear when their absence is finally noticed. The person who once fought for the relationship now watches it die with peaceful acceptance. This shift terrifies those who depended on the empath's endless giving because they suddenly confront an uncomfortable truth. They never actually knew this person. They knew the service the empath provided. They knew the comfort of having someone who absorbed their chaos. They knew the convenience of unconditional support. But they never bothered to learn what made the empath laugh, what dreams kept them awake at night, or what invisible weight they carried while holding everyone else together. The empath's withdrawal reveals the one-sided nature of relationships that everyone pretended were balanced. Suddenly, the person who always initiated contact stops reaching out, and the silence becomes deafening. The person who remembered everyone's birthdays and anniversaries quietly removes themselves from the calendar. The person who championed your success stops celebrating your wins because they realize you never once asked about theirs. People often try to win the empath back when they realize what they've lost. They make promises to change. They offer explanations for their behavior. They reminisce about good times, as if nostalgia can resurrect what their neglect killed. But the empath has already done something they should have done long ago. They started caring about themselves with the same intensity they once cared about others. This isn't cruelty, this is survival. Empaths don't stop caring because they've become cold. They stop caring because continuing to pour from an empty cup was slowly destroying them. They stop caring because they finally understood that setting themselves on fire to keep others warm wasn't noble, it was self-destruction dressed up as virtue. The most profound aspect of this transformation is that empaths don't hate the people they've released. They've simply accepted that some people will only value them for what they provide, not for who they are. They've made peace with the fact that their empathy was mistaken for weakness by those too emotionally immature to recognize its strength. They've learned that walking away from people who drain them isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation. What remains after an empath stops caring is something unexpected: peace. Not the hollow peace of numbness, but the genuine serenity of alignment with one's own worth. They redirect all that powerful empathy inward and begin healing wounds they neglected while bandaging everyone else's. They invest emotional energy in people who reciprocate rather than take. They build relationships based on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. The people left behind often struggle to understand what happened. They construct narratives where the empath is now selfish, suddenly cold, inexplicably different. They refuse to examine their own role in this transformation because that would require acknowledging how they treated someone's heart like a renewable resource. It's easier to paint the empath as the villain than to confront the uncomfortable reality that they took advantage of someone's kindness until there was nothing left to take. But here's the truth that echoes in that profound silence. An empath who stops caring has finally started caring about the right person, themselves. They've learned that their empathy is a gift meant for those who treasure it, not a doormat for those who wipe their feet on it. They've discovered that protecting their peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. They've realized that they deserve the same depth of care they so freely gave to others. So, if you're watching an empath walk away from you with that new, unsettling calm in their eyes, understand this. You didn't just lose someone who cared. You lost someone who cared when no one else did. You lost someone who saw the best in you when you couldn't see it yourself. You lost someone who would have moved mountains for you while you couldn't be bothered to move a pebble for them. And that silence you're hearing, that's not emptiness. That's the sound of an empath finally putting themselves first. That's the sound of boundaries being built where doors used to stay open. That's the sound of someone who gave everything, finally learning they deserved something in return. The most powerful thing an empath can do isn't continuing to care for those who don't care back. It's recognizing when they've poured enough into a bottomless pit and choosing to walk away with their dignity intact. Because the moment an empath stops caring isn't a loss for them, it's a liberation. And for everyone who took them for granted, it's the wake-up call that arrived exactly one moment too late.